I think this story I'm about to do for you, The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. This is actually my first Poe story too. This pairs beautifully with, I've recorded as well by Lefanu. It's not very well known, The White Cat of Drumigunel or something like that. Drumgunel, something like that. But that's about a white cat and this is about a black cat. So I'll put that in the comments for you guys. You should listen to both. And I love calling that one nasty white kitty because that cat is nasty in the Lefanu story. Okay, so this is by Edgar Allan Poe. This was published August 19th, 1843. It was in the Saturday Evening Post. And this is classic. And by the way, I've got the cat sitting on my lap. I don't know if you guys can see. My cat. She likes to sit on my lap when I record her, like whenever I work. Do you see her? She's a pretty baby. So, let's do The Black Cat by Poe. For the most wild yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet, mad am I not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today would unburden my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet, I will not attempt to expound them. To me, they present a little bit horror. To me, they will seem less terrible than Baroque's hereafter. Perhaps some intellect may be found, which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace, some intellect, some more calm, more logical and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive in the circumstance I detail with all nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of many companions. I was especially fond of animals and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time and was never so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in manhood I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. The latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black, and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion, which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention the matter at all for no better reason than that it happens just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty, get out of that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moodily, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. Ruby, get out of that! I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple about treating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. But my disease grew upon me, for what disease is like alcohol? And at length, even Pluto, who was now becoming old and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home, much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, when in his fright at my violence he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fear of the demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fibre of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut from one of its eyes from its socket. Ugh! I blush, I burn, I shudder when I pen the damnable atrocity. When reason returned with the morning, once I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse, for the crime of which I had been guilty. But it was at best a feeble and unequivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess and soon drowned in wine all memory of the deed. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then came, as if in my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit philosophy takes no account, yet I am no more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart. One of those indivisible primary faculties or sentiments which give direction to the character of man, who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or a silly action, for no other reason than because he knows he should not. Have we not a perpetual inclination, in the teeth of our best judgment, to violate that which is law, merely because we understand it to be such? This spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing to the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake, that urged me to continue and finally to consume the injury I had inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning in cool blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree. Hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes and with the bitterest remorse at my heart. Hung it because I knew that it had loved me and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew that in so doing I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal souls to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. On the night of the day on which the cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself thenceforth to despair. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the atrocity. But I am detailing a chain of facts, and wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. The exception was found in the compartment wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plastering here had, in effect, in great measure, resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been recently spread. About this wall a dense crowd were collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a particular portion of it, with very minute and eager attention. The words strange, singular, and some other similar expression excited my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas-relief upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with an accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope about the animal's neck. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by someone of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from sleep. The falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which the flames and the ammonia from the carcass had then accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I was thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and during this period there came back into my spirit a half sentiment that seemed, but was not remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me among the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented for another pet of the same species, and of somewhat similar appearance with which to supply its place. One night, as I sat half stupidly in a den of more than infant me, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object reposing upon the head of one of the immense hogsheads of gin, or rum, which constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat. A very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every respect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite, splotch of white, covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I once offered to purchase it off the landlord, but this person made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. I continued my caresses, and when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once, and became immediately a great favourite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyances rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature a certain sense of shame, the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not for some weeks strike or otherwise violently ill-use it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing and to flee silently from its odious presence as if from the presence of a pestilence. What added no doubt to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning after I brought it home that, like Pluto, it also had been deprived of one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who, as I have already said, possessed in a high degree that humanity of feeling which had once been my distinguishing trait and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity which it would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sit, it would crouch beneath my chair, or spring upon my knees, cover me with its loathsome caresses. If I rose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my dress, clamber in this manner to my breast. At such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from so doing, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, by absolute dread of the beast. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil. And yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I am almost ashamed to own that the terror and horror with which the animal inspired me had been heightened by one of the merest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. My wife had called my attention more than once to the character of the mark of white hair which I had spoken, and which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally very definite, but by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, and which for a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful. It had at length assumed a rigorous distinctness of outline. It was now the representation of an object that I shuddered to name, and for this, above all, I loathed and dreaded, and would have rid myself of the monster had I dread. It was now, I say, the image of a ghastly thing, of the gallows, of mournful and terrible engine, of horror and of crime, of agony and of death. And now, I indeed wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity, and a brute beast whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed, a brute beast to work out for me, a man, fashioned in the image of the high God, so much of insufferable woe. Alas, neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of rest any more. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, and in the latter I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face, and its vast weight an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally upon my heart. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates. The darkest and most evil thoughts, the moodiness of my usual temper increased the hatred of all things, and of all mankind, while, from the sudden and frequent and ungovernable outbursts of a fury, to which I now blindly abandoned myself, my uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers. One day she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the steep stairs, and nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me to madness. Uplifting an axe and forgetting In my wrath, the childish dread which had hitherto stayed my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal, which of course which would have proved instantly fatal, had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife. Goaded by the interference into a rage more than demoniacal, I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot with a groan. The hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith, with an entire deliberation, to the task sit down, of concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house. Okay, mommy's reading, sit down. Either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again I deliberated about casting it into the well in the yard, about packing it in a box as if to merchandise, with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient than either of these. I determined to wall it up into the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are required to have walled up the other victims. For a purpose such as this, the cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed, and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls was a projection caused by a false chimney, or fireplace had been filled up, and made to resemble the rest of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the whole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and having carefully deposited the body against the inner wall, I propped it in that position while, with little trouble, I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. Having procured mortar, sand, and hair with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over the new brickwork. When I had finished, I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not disturb the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, here at last, then, my labor has not been in vain. My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at that moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate. But it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and forebore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe or to imagine the deep and blissful sense of relief that the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus for one night at least, since its introduction into my house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burden of murder upon my soul. The second and the third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again I breathed as a free man. The monster in terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, a party of the police came, very unexpectedly, into the house, and proceeded again to make a rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatsoever. The officers bade me accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored. At length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar. I quivered not in a muscle. My heart beat calmly as that of one who slumbers with innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end. I folded my arms upon my bosom and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee at my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say but one word by way of my triumph, and to render so doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. Gentlemen, I said at last, as the party ascended the steps, I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all health and little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well constructed house. In the rabid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. I may say an excellently well constructed house. These walls, are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together. And here, through the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane, which I held in my hand, upon the very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the corpse of the wife of my bosom. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the arch-fiend. No sooner had the reverberations of my blows struck into silence Then I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, by a cry at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelled into one loud and long and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony, and the demons that exult in the damnation. Of my own thoughts it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the party upon the stairs remained motionless, through extremity of terror and of awe. In the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft had seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me the hangman. I had walled up the monster within the tomb. That was The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. Oh my god. I didn't realize it was that ferocious with the violence. I mean, I knew a cat got killed. I didn't realize that way. Oh well, it's Edgar Allan Poe. What are you gonna do? It's a horror story. But anyway, so this is a good one to bear with the White Cat of Dromigol, if I'm saying it right. Like when I read the story, I remember how to pronounce it. But anyways, the point is, it's good. It's a cat. It's unclear if it's like a fairy or what it is, but it's really good. So I would pair this. So the dog is Lulu. She's a Welsh Pembroke corgi, and then my black cat here, Ruby. And the dog thinks his name is Ruby, by the way, even though it's Lulu. She answers to Ruby for some reason. And they're still getting used to each other, I guess. So Ruby doesn't like Lulu. And, I've had Ruby for 10 years. I'm not going to get rid of either one, obviously. But it's just so how you see the two of them. The dog does not ever try to bite Ruby or anything. She's just, I don't know. Sometimes the dog just tries to come up to the cat and sniff her butt. I'm like, oh my god. Like, stop doing that. Alright, let me pull your cards. So, I did this morning, a couple of, if you're, into, if you guys follow my other work, I also work with, I guess when I narrate the stories, I sometimes go by different names, sometimes Barcud, which is, by the way, it's a kite bird in Welsh. I sometimes use that name, but I guess I don't want to say it's my official name, but I go by Ghost Patrick Slash. So, and I always say I'm Ghost Patrick Slash, your favorite Cumber and Hearth Witch. So, and I've got my other channels where I'm doing my twin flame work, and I've been exploring with the different deities, Cumbrian pre-Roman deities. So I did this morning. Nodens, I'm not sure what the right way, but Nodens. He's a god, Roman god of, or pre-Roman or Roman god of dogs and hunting and water and whatever. So for healing the divine masculine, because I'm also incorporating some of Jung's symbolism with healing the shadow, the black sun and the white Albedo moon and everything. No, is it Albedo? Albedo? I think when I was talking to Nicole Pellet about it, it either said Albedo or Albedo, but it's one of the two. So anyways, the point is, I did that, so check those out. There's a Nodens meditation, and I also did tarot. And then also for remove third party, because if you guys have an SP or twin flame that you're working on manifesting, those are the biggest things. Healing the divine masculine, so they stop the back and forth and the hot cold. And I have cat hair in my nose, that's why I keep rubbing. And removing third party. So there's two meditations on there. So let me pull the cards. But oh my god, I love black cats, by the way. And you always hear me talk about black cat energy. That's you attract things to you. That's what that means. But anyway, so this is quite a story. I'm almost surprised. I don't want to say I'm surprised that Poe is so popular. So horrible. So violent. You'll say, well, you watch movies. Well, I don't really watch horror movies as much anymore. I'm very busy all the time and stuff, but I don't know. Maybe there's something about reading it versus watching it. I guess I just didn't expect it to be so. Whoa. Maybe that's part of his enduring popularity. Okay, the Hierophant is reversed, so this is somebody who's not doing things traditionally anymore. They're doing things their own way. Page of Swords is upright. That is like, it's like maybe like spark of an idea. It's gathering information maybe. Maybe like looking at things in the world upright. This is like something, a new cycle starting. Let me pull two more. We'll call this our Black Cat energy spread. Page of Pentacles. This card keeps coming up. This is like the beginning of something. Like the beginning of something real that's going to be like long term. Something that's going to like, it's like a real thing. It's not like anything flimsy or fleeting. Ooh, and the Nine of Pentacles. So that's like satisfaction, happiness. So we're doing that. We're calling this Black Cat energy. I guess it'd be you're doing things your own way. You are getting like ideas that you bring to completion, and like something's coming back around. It's like something that's unresolved. And Page of Pentacles, it's like maybe it's like as you embrace yourself and your energy, you do things your way, and then like you go towards your desires, and you find like real ways to make it happen. That like, because if when I like do the cards, it's not just, oh, this card means this. It's also like, well, what is a general story you get from the cards? Does that make sense? So this cat loves to sit on my lap, and like she doesn't care if I'm like typing, but I'm not complaining. I love my cat very much. Like, look at her, she's so sweet. She's a little brat. Do you see her? Do you guys see that? Ruby, the cat, and then the dog comes by. As soon as the dog comes by, the cat gets like, so, and this is Lulu. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and if you guys start off by violence against animals and stories, then maybe don't listen to these videos. And I've heard stories like people getting attacked by people that got like set off by an animal being killed in a story. First of all, it's a story; it's not real. And second of all, what do you call it? It's a story. But anyways, I don't know. I don't know what I would do if someone did that to me. I probably would just block the comment and remove it. Or I don't know, maybe I'd leave it for engagement. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. But I have bigger fish to fry, I guess, so I'm not worried about it. Maybe you want to attack me because a cat died, I guess go ahead. I have other worries. I have other things I'm concerned about that I'm trying to like fix and whatever, so. Some of us get mad that a cat died in a story. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to trigger you or set you off, but if you did get triggered, set off. Really, we have to all learn to manage our emotions, so. I'm not trying to invite anything, I'm just saying if you get upset that an animal died in a story, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. You need to, well, actually, no, I do know what to tell you. Look at what, that's a wound in you that's not healed. Sit with that, actually. Maybe do some journal work with it. What does that mean for you? There's like something that happened to you when you were younger that is sparking off. And if you can like sit with that, actually, that shadow, that you might actually be able to start to heal that. So, I mean, I'm not gonna like do like free readings and stuff for people, but that's not what I mean. But just anytime, if you ever notice something in general, that something is like really bothers you, you can't even put your finger on why. There's probably like some hidden shadow thing, and if you can spend some time doing either like maybe journaling, meditation on that, you might get to the bottom of that, and then you can like heal that root cause. And you don't have to do that, but just if you want to get to the bottom of it, because a lot of time when we feel triggered by something, what's really going on is there's an unhealed wound that thing is touching, and then you're like, especially like it's some part of you that's maybe like forgotten, that's crying out to be heard. So if you can sit with that part and hear it, that actually could be healing for yourself. So an animal getting killed in a story might represent to you something like a part of you that felt cut off or repressed, that maybe either you've forgotten or someone else made you feel less than and forgotten, like you didn't matter. So if you can get to the root of that, like do something to make, I don't mean like anything bad, or like, okay, don't do anything that's going to be harmful to anyone else or yourself. If you can find a way to honor yourself, honor that part of yourself to feel heard, that's what I'm talking about. So, does that make sense? And anyways, I don't know. So I hope you guys like this story. I like Poe. I'm gonna do more of his stories. Right now I'm. It's not like a set schedule, but just I've kind of got like a body of works I'm working from. If I have the time, I'm gonna try to get to some others today. But you know, Lovecraft, The Haunted House by Charles Dickens. That's supposed to be very atmospheric. Eventually during the summer, probably by the autumn. If I haven't done it by the autumn, I'll do it in the autumn. Dunwich Horror, Dreams in the Witch House, The Whisper in the Darkness, obviously, and The Gates of Pagana by Lord Dunsany, The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany, The White Wolf of Copstochin by Sir Gilbert Campbell, and also there's this other werewolf story, The Werewolf by Clemens Hausman, Blood in the Mist. I had to finish chapter 17 to 24, and Harford O'Donnell's Warning by Charlotte Riddell. It's something kind of like with medical, with like chloroform or something. And what else? So we have those. There's some other stories I like, but they're not public domain, so I can't do them. But one, if I could do it, The Entrance by Gerald Duval. If you guys have not checked it out, you need to check that story out. It's so good. I actually thought it was a Victorian story. It's not. It was written in the 70s, but it is so good. It's this guy finds a manuscript from like 1901 or early 1900s. The character in the story, maybe, and then this person hires them to go to their castle. I think it's in Bordeaux, France, and it's like a castle on the mountains, like overlooking a cliff. And wintertime France, Bordeaux, like they're speaking my language. I love haunted houses. I love castles. I would love to own a castle. There's a castle I want to go to someday. Well, there's a couple of them. I want to go to Carroll Castle in Wales, and there's a castle called Charvel Castle in Ireland that I saw like some videos inside of it. My God, it's gorgeous. Well, I mean, the outside looks like a fairy tale too, but inside I was like, whoa, beautiful. And it's got like these like antlers chandelier in the beginning when you go in. I was like, wow, it looks nice. It's like gothic apparently. You know, I like gothic stuff, but I guess I don't like the cliche gothic. I like to add like a little flourish to it, not just like everything be. Do you know what I mean? Like cliche, no. Think of cliche, but then add like a twist. That's what I do. And you always know what it's gonna be. So, anyways, I will do some of the stories for you. And I did open. I think I told you guys I opened my hotline. So, like I say, I'm available for readings, or if you just want like advice about something. I mean, obviously, you know, within like I can't like give medical advice or legal advice, but you know, there's like a situation or something. And what else? I know a lot about twin flames and like manifesting your SP. I know a lot about that because I've been working for 10 years with that. So with Keen. But Keen apparently decided to delete our listings on all of us all. I haven't been logging in because I've been busy doing YouTube, and they just put in their newsletter, and I don't read the newsletter. They deleted all of our listings, so I went to log in yesterday. Was yesterday or Saturday? All my listings are gone. I was like, okay, fine, bye. But the dog's getting upset. I don't know. So I guess I don't work on Keen anymore, which is fine. They didn't just do it to me. They did it to anybody that, if you hadn't like logged in the past 60 days and had a sale, they deactivated you. I hadn't been logged in since like what, the end of March. That's only like a month or two. It's not even like years. I'm trying to build up my own tarot practice, and then I've got now 10 YouTube channels. And then I told you guys I started my own psychic hotline. Well, phone service. It's called Cumbrian Hearth Manor phone service. So there's like on the description if you want to call it. Anyways, I'm babbling. I hope you guys like this story. I liked it. And check out White Cat of Drumgoniel. I need to put that in the link and in the pinned comment for you. It's a very good story. I don't know. I loved it. And like, I love how in the White Cat of Drumgoniel by Lefanu, he's got, the cat is sitting on somebody's chest, like hissing at the people. It's just atmosphere and like these animals. I mean, this one, the poor cat, I can't blame it for not liking him. He was like doing, but it's almost like this second cat was like that first one he killed, like come back to get revenge on him. So Revenge of the Cat. I just had to do that. Okay, I'll talk to you guys soon.